new research shows that women in their 30s are £4,000 worse off than when the Tories came to power in 2010.
Yeah, well, that is according to Labour's analysis of ONS figures. Anneliese Dodds is the Shadow Secretary of State for Women and Equalities, and she joins us now. Good to see you this morning. What is going on here? £4,000 odd worse off in real terms. Why is that?
Good morning. Well, that's obviously a huge reduction in women's living standards that we've seen, particularly marked for women in their 30s, but across the board, especially for women, but actually for households in general, we've seen those living standards falling. Next year, households on average are going to be seeing their incomes fall by 3.5% compared with before the pandemic. So we really need to see action being taken here. The gender pay gap for women in their 30s doubled over last year. So we need to see action against that pay gap. Labour set out measures that would make a difference here. Flexible working from day one, action against sexual harassment, and above all, action to get our economy growing again, for women and for men. Growth in the UK economy has been revised down for next year, for the year after that and the year after that. So we need to see a plan for growth. The Conservatives don't have one, but Labour does have that plan.
It's interesting because we were talking earlier on in the programme about the Princess of Wales's initiative to help parents with early age children. And you've been looking at women in their 30s. Is it the fact that it's just so expensive to have children nowadays, particularly when you're having to think about going into work and looking for childcare, which is extortionate?
Yeah, I think this is an absolutely huge issue, and in fact we see many families postponing when they start a family, not because they want to. Obviously in many cases it will be driven by choice, but in other cases it's driven by the fact that women are really worried and the rest of their family about the cost of childcare. We've also seen really radically increasing costs in housing as well, and we've not then seen any increase in wages that is commensurate. And actually this isn't something that women need to put up with. There is a different approach here. We can see those new measures being put in that Labour's called for to support women in the economy, but also to get these other costs down as well. Labour said that we would introduce free breakfast clubs for every primary school age child. We can do that by cancelling the non-dom tax exemption. We think if people live here, they should pay tax here. Simple measures like that would take some of that burden off working women, and we really need to be doing that right now.
There are a lot of pressures on the public purse, as you've alluded to. I tell you what may stick in the craw for some people, though, and I'm not having a go, but the fact that you say things like breakfast clubs will be paid for by the non-dom business, that seems to be paying for everything at the moment.
Well, actually it's not. So Labour initially said that a proportion of the really substantial funds that would be released if we cancelled that exemption would go towards our NHS workforce plan. Now actually the Conservative government finally nabbed that plan. We're really pleased that they did. They haven't said, by the way, how they're going to pay for it, but because the government have actually introduced that, that's why we've said, OK, with that money that is saved, we'll be using that non-dom tax exemption money to pay for the free breakfast clubs and also to pay for overtime for staff in our NHS. This is fully costed, so this is different from how the Conservatives have approached these issues. Obviously, many people watching this will be still being hammered by that mortgage penalty because of the fact that Liz Truss introduced uncosted measures. That's not what Labour does. We do cost our measures, and we have set out exactly what we would use that non-dom tax exemption for. As I said, those free breakfast clubs for primary school age children, and for those extra appointments, 2 million extra appointments in our NHS.
Do you think there's a level of misogyny around, not just this government, but society in general, that just don't care that much about women?
Well, I think the problem with that approach ultimately is that all of society is failed when we're not ensuring that women are supported in work, because it really is women who hold the key to the economic recovery that we need to see. If you look, for example, at a different age group of women who are in their 50s and 60s, we've seen a huge exodus of women in that age group from the workplace. Now, that seems to be because we've not seen action from government on flexibility at work, on the menopause as well, where women are experiencing symptoms and their workplace isn't supporting them with that, and in other factors like sexual harassment. If we got that sorted out, not only would we see a positive impact on those women able to go back into work or to stay in work, but that would be really good for our economy as well. You know, it would enable those women to be part of the workforce, obviously, but also to be paying taxes, to be contributing in the way that many of them want to be within the formal economy, but they're just not able to at the moment. And of course, care pressures factoring in there as well. So, you know, when we take action to support women in our economy, we support everyone, and we support the stronger economy that we need to see in the UK.
Anneliese Dodds, can I just throw a quick one at you about migration? 672,000 is one of the figures that seems to be out. Huge net migration figures. It's a big issue for the voting public in Great Britain. What would Labour... I mean, does Labour even accept that migration figures need to be reduced? And if so, what would you do about it?
Well, yes, we think these figures represent an appalling failure of the Conservative government, because lying underneath them is a 54% increase in work visas, a 156% increase in health and social care visas. You know, Labour has been saying for months and months to the government, please get rid of this system where there's a 20% discount on staff through that shortage occupation scheme and no requirement for training of domestic workers. You know, the government have not got a grip on domestic training, on domestic workforce planning. They haven't delivered on that. They've not altered that shortage occupation scheme. And as I said, we've seen those figures for the increase in work visas really substantially increasing under the Conservatives. We need to be taking action on this, and Labour set out exactly how we would. You know, we've got a clear plan on these issues. I heard apparently Robert Jenrick is floating some ideas on this today. Well, they've had 13 years to sort this out. Labour's not interested in gimmicks and floating ideas. We're actually interested in getting a grip and delivering on this.
OK, Anneliese Dodds, good to talk to you. Thank you.